surprising to me. Last year we really struggled to have any babies at all in our groups. And so obviously this year worried about 1-year-olds. Well, now we've just got tons of 1-year-olds. I don't know where they all came from, but again, we have like no babies. So we tried to run 3 baby classes and we're down to 1, and that one is small. So that's one thing that's striking me as odd, or, I just don't know what to make of that. And the other one that is really strange to me is our evening classes are small, and that's never been the case before. So all our toddler classes are full except for the evening. Our preschool evening class is only got 5 or 6, I think, and then our baby one was one of the ones we had to close down. So just wondering what everybody else's experiences have been as far as that goes.
Our enrollment has been up, which has been exciting because the last several years I've taught so many classes that only had 3 or 4 in them. So like barely felt like classes, just tiny. We're a pretty small ECFE program. We usually only have 1 infant class, and we've got 24 babies in it. So we split into 2 sections. So I've got the birth to 4-month-olds and a retired parent educator who's coming back to sub because we're sorely understaffed, is taking the 5 to 12-month-olds. But our parent-child preschool, which meets twice a week, is our only class that's still really, really low. There's only 3 or 4 in that one. But almost all of my other classes have 10, 11, or 12. They're right up at capacity. A couple are almost at 14, I think, which is our full. So it's the first time I've had big classes. It's kind of a fun new challenge. Last year I had about 25 families total, and this year I have about 70. So it's a big change.
And I see that Nikki and Maggie have joined us. So welcome, Nikki. Welcome, Maggie. So I just put over there in chat. So we were just talking about the beginning of the school year, and Julie was just commenting on some changes in enrollment in her, you said you have fewer babies and fewer night classes, or fewer people in your night classes. Yeah. So she was curious about how, enrollment was similar or different this year. How about for you, Nikki?
Interestingly enough, enrollment the numbers are back up for almost all of the classes, but not all. So I have two classes back to back on Tuesdays. One has 9, one has 11, and we will take 12. Thursdays I have a class that has 10. But my Monday classes, and I have an evening class too, and that's doing okay. But I think because I don't know if this is why this is, but Monday at 8:45 I have 3 families. And granted, we have a lot of Mondays that we don't have school. It's a huge bummer because not only do we not have school for, like Martin Luther King and President's Day and all of these holidays, our district always puts professional development on the same day. And so they choose Mondays. We have a few that are not that day, like usually an election day is a professional development day for us on a Tuesday. But personally, I work with the groups that are my Monday groups to figure out, yep, I'm from Robbinsdale. Thank you, Susan. That I have my groups still meet at the same time on those Mondays if they're available to do so. Sometimes it causes a problem, like if they have older kids, if it's a professional development day and they have older kids that they then have with them because there's no school, it makes it a little harder. But on those days that we don't have class, I'll have the parents they create like a text group, and they'll still pick like a park or figure out that they'll still meet at that same day and time. But I suppose when you're looking at a registration catalog, you don't know that. And so I don't know if it's, we've had school start times change. So classes are 8:45 to 10:15 is the first class. So I don't know if that's too early on a Monday morning, so this is the first time that we've had that. And they used to be 9 to 10:30, so only 15 minutes different. Or if they've caught on that there's a different sliding fee scale for the Mondays versus the other days. And they're like, why? I do not know, but my Monday class has 3. And so I told them, please, I invite you, go ahead and bring a friend, bring a family next week, have them come and check us out. And if they want to register, we'll get them registered. I'll ask for forgiveness later. But we, next week is bring a friend day. I have no clue if anybody will, but one of them, she did have a friend call me who has a kiddo who's not the right age, and she's getting registered for a different class. So now I feel like I should do that with all of my classes in some capacity. Like, I don't know, but any thoughts or suggestions for me? What do I do?
Nikki, the only thing that comes to mind is, parents talk to each other. Like, and so, there's like that plane that when we're teachers, like we're not in, right? Even we can be friendly and connected with them and stuff, but people still sort of have their own little conversations. And I would just wonder if there's parents certainly that you're confident with, like you could just ask them, like if they've heard anything from other families about, is it, because it might give you the information about maybe it is the sliding scale fee thing. Maybe it is the difference in time that 15 minutes or whatever. I don't know what time your classes started before, but for a family with little kids, that could be huge, right? And especially if they planned, are the families returning ECFE parents, or is this just sort of a general practice
It's both. It's both.
Yeah.
But the 8:45 start time did not impact any of the days other than Monday. So I just
interesting. Well,
it is
Monday,
yeah, but it's hard.
Yeah.
So I hope to grow that one, but we're feeling good about the other classes. We're feeling like enrollment is recovering after the pandemic, because we enrolled for some of our groups, we enrolled a third is what we did. We capped them at 4, and we will usually take 12. And so, to be running groups of 4 people, that was small for them when we came back. And, so 12 is a ton. It's a huge group to them.
Nikki, what is the class on Monday mornings?
It's a terrific 2s, which is always filled. Yeah.
And
The
again,
only thing that sorry.
I was
Julie,
just gonna say, it's,
yeah.
I mean, I know it's always kind of cyclical, but last year we could not get 2-year-olds. We just couldn't. And then this year our 2-year-olds are full. So I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say a couple things. Like I just remember doing either like a 1-page handout with classes that still have space in them, or like a marketing on the Robbinsdale ECFE website or whatever website or Facebook page or whatever there is, and for that class that sometimes would help, and sometimes with like that handout of like the classes that are available. Or I know it's like extra work on your end too, of like, oh, I'm gonna create, now I have time to create a little handout. But like giving them to home visitors, that was something that we would do, of like, so that if they're happen to meet a family or talk to a family. Yeah, those are just a couple of things. I wonder if parents also are like with the 2-year-olds, it's just like getting back into the swing of like school and separating. I don't know if anybody has seen separation stuff post COVID.
So we were talking about that this week too, is that our terrific 2 is these toddlers. These are the COVID babies, right? They were born at the beginning of the pandemic. And so they've had a very different experience than our other terrific 2s kiddos. Yeah.
I wonder if there's like some anxiety or something with the parents of like, do I sign up for the class? Are they going to have me separate right away? Like, what does that look like? I don't know. These are unfounded. There's no, they're just, I have an almost 2-year-old. So I'm like, yeah, I kind of feel that. That's my only data.
We kind of came at things with the assumption that everybody, parents and children, would have some separation issues coming back. And so we talked about it. They talked about it the first day I was there, or the first day I wasn't there, the first day of class. I turned off my video because our building is having connectivity issues, and so I lost you for a bit. So, and our numbers are, we have 2 classes that meet every once in a while on Saturday. One's called Infant Toddler Playtime. It has 8 kids. We have 2 more on a waiting list, and I requested and got permission to add the 2 who are on the waiting list to the class. There are 2 teachers in the class, an early childhood educator and a parent educator, but there's no discussion and no separation for the 1.5 hours. So I think we can handle 10, pretty sure, with the parents there. And we have a class that's from 10:45 to 12:15. And we have a class before that that used to be really well, we had really good enrollment. It was an all dads class. And about 3 years ago, our BLT decided to change that and move the dads class to Monday night and pitch it for Saturday mornings. So now it's a birth to 3rd grade class. And sorry, building leadership team. It's part of the.
Not BLT, not.
Oh, sorry about that. Not that kind of a BLT. People who make decisions and aren't accountable to anybody, as far as I can tell, it stands for, but I probably shouldn't have recorded that, but anyway. So they decided to do that. And we had, I think, 4 or 5
Did you cut out, Mary?
She's holding us in suspense. Oh, Mary Kay will be back. She'll be back. Maggie, how did your school year start?
Good. Yeah, it's busy in different ways. So I don't know if I've met you, Julie, before, but I used to be a parent educator in Minneapolis Public Schools, but now I work at the University of Minnesota as an academic advisor in the Parent and Family Ed program. So I just love coming to these to like get all the hot gossip. No, I just love hearing, I like miss the parent ed world, and I love hearing what's like relevant and yeah, to parent educators and how people are doing. And it's all important for our students too, who will soon be in the field. So, but yeah, it was good. It's been good. It's just been really busy. There's, we have the application deadline on October 1st. So, and we have a Ford Fellowship. I don't know if anybody's heard about that, but that's to help fund one person to get their license. So, yeah, just receiving a lot of calls about that. So, but yeah.
And then how many students do you anticipate will do student teaching this year?
Oh gosh, like 10, which last year was 24.
Woo! It was like when I
24.
first started like 15 years ago, like it was 10, you know, and then it was like 10, 10, 10, you know, 8, 12, whatever. And then like the last, 5 years, it's just been crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Well then good. This sounds a little more normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy about it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Why the difference this school year? What do you mean?
Fewer students.
Yeah. No. I'm just thinking, what do you think caused that change this year over last year?
Oh,
That
like
there's fewer-
fewer student teacher or
Yeah.
I don't know, Susan, I'd love to know what you think, but I feel like COVID had people who took a pause on working for whatever reason, decided to get their license
Yeah.
and push through, but I don't know. That's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in some case, I know some years there was a bit of a backlog. There were a few students that were finishing up that took, so there's, if anybody isn't familiar with the U of M program, it's not a cohort model where you come in and you do like classwork for exact amount of time and then you're done. And so students can take whatever they're going to take. And then, and so there are some students that will take, you know, rather than say 2 years to get their license, they could take 4 years, you know, or they could do 2 years in and then take a break and then leave of absence and then come back and finish. So not in all cases, but I would guess some of the sort of the whatever they call it, that, you know, bump going through the snake, you know, was kind of a backlog of students that were finishing. And then, you know, and when there's an economic, and I think, you know, when there's an economic downturn, you know, too, people are more likely to go back to school. And it could also be, I mean, our enrollment was also pretty high there for a couple of years, which was good for the viability of the program. But there were, you know, it could just be, again, almost like a cohort effect of, there are a lot of people who will join the program when their kids have started elementary school, or, you know, when they're in their later 30s or whatever. So I think we also had kind of a bump in students. Also, I don't know this for sure, but I don't know how many other parent ed license programs are out there and still available in terms of St. Cloud or Concordia. If you are, great, because we need more.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether or not the availability of classes and all of that, but most definitely it could have been also during COVID, because the program has been online for so long.
Yes.
That it was, you know, so yeah, I would just guess it was a whole combination of factors. But the problem with having too much is that the program doesn't have the resources in terms of the person power to really do that quality. So I think 10 is great because, you know, placement of those students is, you know, as I would talk to people who do placement, it was just cray, right? I mean, just trying to find and especially for people where, you know, they were in like Duluth or a northern part of Minnesota or something like that.
That was definitely the hardest.
Yeah.
Because some of those students were working as parent educators and they had to work with another person, and that person might be an hour away. So trying to be flexible. But yeah, if anyone's ever interested in working with a student,
Yeah.
come see me. Nikki's done it. She did it. I don't know if you'll do it again, but with some of the issues.
Oh yeah, well you can put her on the spot. She's being recorded right now. So.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry. This is a side note. Anyways, Mary Kay's back. Mary Kay's back.
Mary Kay's back. Mary Kay, how's your internet?
Well, they're working on it in the building. So
Okay.
they're working on phones and internet and whatever. So I don't know what's going on, but I'm on now.
Okay. Do you remember what you were talking? You're telling us like you cut off at a like
I was
age.
talking about that our birth to third grade class on Saturday mornings had about 6 families in the spring. We didn't offer that class during the summer, and then we have 2 families last time I checked, and we had 2 families like for the first couple weeks of registration, and then one of them dropped, and then another one joined almost instantaneously. And I don't know either family, so I don't know what might have gone into it. But that's the reasons that we have. That's the reason that we have a full-time. I mean, a parent educator and an early childhood educator, because we do separate for the first class. And last year it was really helpful. We had an interesting combo of people. Somebody who is at the U working on her degree in finance and speaks 4 languages, although English is the last one to be added. So that was an interesting piece. She also speaks Vietnamese, Cantonese, and something else. We had a family who had 3 under 4, including a set of twins. You know, so it was just a really interesting combo of people, fun, bonded, good. So I'm going to be really disappointed. In our program, our leaders keep saying that we need to have 4 families for every class, but when it comes down to where the rubber hits the road, we usually can talk them into trying to wait a few weeks and see if we can build it. Don't know if that'll work or not. Often it does. Often some people, it seems, don't sign up for things until they get their elementaries in place, and then they go, oh yeah, there's ECFE. Maybe I should sign up for it. So I technically have 5 classes. One of them is because one of our parent educators is on long-term leave, family leave, I think. So I just picked up the one that I could do that day that was hers, and I'll be doing that till December, and I don't know what's what. So, so that means 3 on Mondays and then 2 every other or a little less than that Saturdays.
How's that working out with your real job or your full, not your real job, your full-time job, your other job?
Here's my here's my line. I'm bivocational because I don't want to give either one of them up. So they are both real jobs. Our district decided, our ECFE staffing decided this fall to change the staff meeting from Thursdays to Mondays, which is the day I'm there teaching, which was an incredible gift because last year it was on Thursdays and I was required to show up in person. So that meant I took a half day off and worked morning and evening on Thursdays in my other job. And this year they decided they could live with that being on a Monday. So, and it inconveniences other people too, but I'm okay with other people being inconvenienced for a little while. Well, it makes it a whole lot easier for me. And I'm also really willing to switch back if.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seniority, Mary Kay.
Oh, that doesn't matter. Seniority only counts if you're full-time.
Ah,
Because I have more seniority than any other parent educator on our staff.
yeah.
Except our early childhood coordinator. No, technically I have more than she does too.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
So the conversation brought up something. I mean, certainly if somebody has something you'd like to ask the group, I don't want to horn in on that. So go ahead and like veto this. But what I was wondering about was your take on like COVID effects. So actually, was it Nikki or Maggie when, oh, I guess when you said COVID baby, you know, it's like, of course. And then I'm thinking, you know, like 5 years down the road, everybody's going to be writing grants to like look at the impact of COVID on children's development, right? And I mean, you see it in some way now, even in the work I do. You know, you see all this descriptive stuff about, you know, how kids did in school and, you know, access to technology and stuff like that. But it's still too early. And we're still, you know, Mary Kay talks about you know, she's recovering from COVID. So we're still in it. It's not like we're past it. But I think that 2021 school year was very likely, you know, the key, the worst of it. So, you know, but you were talking about like effects on 2-year-olds and separation and that sort of thing. So I was just curious about your take on what are you seeing with young children and families or parents, or what do you know, suspect might be some after effects of COVID? And hi, Jenny. Nice to see your face.
Hello.
With the COVID baby question, I think separation is tough for the parents. Of course, I think it's hard for the kids, but I think it's hard for the parents. And thus, the kids are social referencing. And so if their parents are nervous, there's not really another way to be other than nervous in terms of what the kids are going to take from that. So I feel like a lot of parents, they haven't had the opportunity, right, over the pandemic to separate. They just had their kids and they were home. And I think it's really emotional for them.
It's purely anecdotal, but even last year, we were definitely noticing the numbers of children who had speech delays was a lot higher than it has been in the past. And children struggling with separation issues because and stranger anxiety, like really getting overstimulated and scared being in a large group because they never have been before. So lots and lots of, I realized that our program is almost completely birth to 3. It goes up to through pre-K up until kindergarten, but almost all of our kids in our program are birth to 3 years old. They're all COVID babies. Like there's no one who isn't a COVID baby. They all were either just born before it hit or born during the pandemic. So it will be interesting going forward, but definitely some social learning stuff and speech seems to be the delays that we've seen.
I was going to add, until 9 months ago, I was working in Montessori schools. And our toddler teacher so this would have been more of the first year of COVID, but she noticed that 15 and 16-month-old is when they would come into our toddler program. And she was noticing a lot of motor development issues, as well as independence issues, like children who normally at 16 months could do some things for themselves, but it was clear that the parents who'd had them home since birth had been doing everything for them and not really letting them try out, putting a shirt on or that kind of thing. So I'm just curious if other people had seen that.
I don't know about other skills, but I do know that regarding separation, one of the things we said this last year to most parents in our program was, we know that a lot of people haven't separated from their children during the pandemic, but we want you to know that this staff has like 20 years average experience with helping parents and children separate. And my line is always, we have no investment in your child or you being unhappy in that separation. So we will do everything we know how to do to help that not happen. And we'll tell you everything that we know. And so I think it reassures them a little bit to say, oh yeah, separation isn't new. The experience you had may have made that worse in terms of the challenge of right now. But children have been learning how to separate from their parents for a long, long time. And we have the skills to help that happen.
I know I've really encouraged our early childhood teacher to this might seem counterintuitive, but to be relatively quick to call the parent room to have a parent come back in the first 2 weeks of school. Because even if it's not their child, seeing the phone ring and knowing that if their child is distressed, they really will call you back, I think makes the parents feel a little more secure that they really are okay leaving their little ones with the early childhood team. So I tell her, be quick on the first few days to call a parent back saying, oh, your little one needs you, just so that the parents know that we're not letting them cry and get super over distressed. We will call them. And that, because I think so much is true, the babies and children feel what their parents are feeling. So if the parents are feeling secure about that separation time, it'll be much easier for the kids too.
This is helpful. I'm having my first classes Monday, so we were a little bit later in Roseville. And I was thinking about one of the warm up or getting to know you questions is that before we jump into other things is really to ask, how are you feeling about separation? Because I've got 2 toddler classes, young toddlers, old toddlers on Monday. And you just realize the parent, like they're not going to be able to do any kind of getting to know you or anything else if they're processing all these big feelings.
I remember having a group that I kind of sensed had a lot of anxiety, and I don't know if I do this for every group, but it did work for this group. We would just have the early childhood teacher call like 10 minutes in or something. I can't remember how far in, and just say how things are going. Like everyone's good. They're playing over here. Like if there's some kids over here, like she would just kind of give us like, and then I would tell the parents like, everyone's doing okay, just like not that anything's wrong. It's just like, all right, there, oh, Teddy found a truck over there and he's doing just fine now or something like that, just to do a little check-in. But I also feel like, I don't know if other people do this, but the first like time you separate, I mean, how long do you go for? I think I did like 10 minutes.
We also do shorter, and we tell the parents that we base it off of the kids. And so the children's teacher will usually call us back and give us like a, wrap it up and come on back in 2 minutes. We need you back. And so us to 15, 20 minutes or whatever is happening with the kids. And so we let the parents know at the beginning that we'll build up to that hour.
Can I ask then, just logistically, when you're doing that, are you still breaking the class for separation at the same time? And then you're coming back early and then there's more playtime, or the class ends?
My classes do more parent-child interaction time, and then they do a snack time, and the parents just kind of sit beside them as they do that snack time. They usually do snack time for about the last 10 minutes of their group.
We actually do the regular time of the hour of separation for a 2-hour class. And we might send a parent back if there's a concern. But because a lot of our kids have been in this situation before, and we really regularize separating being challenging, that's everyone has to do at a certain age. I don't know if I shared this story before, but if I did, somebody stop me. But a couple of summers ago, we had, and this is before pandemic, but we had about 6 Indian families who signed up for an evening class in the summer. And when we separated at the gym, 6 Indian families and 1 Caucasian family, when they separated at the gym, all of the kids were crying, all of them. And we got back to the parent education room, and I ditched what I was going to start with. And I said, so tell me, what has been your experience separating with your child? And none of them had any except the Caucasian family who was in the class, who I'd had in class before. So I knew that. And so I said, okay, let's start with, this is normal. This is what kids will do when they are unhappy somewhere. They let us know that. And here's what our staff is doing right now. They're distracting, they're playing with, they're comforting, they're doing whatever seems to be helpful to get them to move on to this. And let me clue you in. If your child is distressed today, they are liable to be distressed next week and the week after. And usually by the 5th week, nobody's distressed. That's common. And it was a 5-week class. So I was like, please let this work. But I mean, when we came back into the parent room that night, every mother had tears in her eyes, and some were crying more openly. At least 2 dads had tears in their eyes. And I just really hoped against hope that it would work well and that it would be fine. And we didn't get called back that first night. And I know that our staff would call me if we had a problem and somebody needed something or they couldn't handle what was going on. And by the 5th night, when we separated, there was nobody crying, no children, no parents, everybody was cool. Even though the pandemic has given us some different challenges, I also think that it's okay to settle into some of the challenges that are normal and the same, and to be confident about the fact that we know how to deal with them.
From my experience, as far as separation goes, I haven't seen a big difference. I haven't seen a big difference in general, but definitely not with the kids. I don't see that it's harder for them because they've never known anything else. But for the parents, I think they recognize that this has been different than what I thought having a baby would be like, or having a child would be like. And they recognize that they've been with their child all this time. And so I do see when there's a bigger difficulty, it seems to be more on the parents' end. They're the ones having the harder time than the kids. So that's just been my experience. And starting the year, we separate as we do throughout the rest of the year. But our toddler classes there's only one, we have one separating twos class, that all the other ones are non-separating. We're in the same room with the screen dividing us, and the kids can go back and forth. So it's kind of a nice way of giving them that little bit of separation. That's not true separation, eases them into it. But I can't say that I've seen a big change with the kids. The big thing that I've noticed as far as changes with COVID is I feel like there's more that feel overwhelmed when the group is large. So if they're coming into a full classroom, that's always been overwhelming for some, but I'm seeing it a little bit more now.
I'll just chime in as the parent of a 2-year-old, long time ago, not now. How what you were saying about how challenging it is for parents, how helpful it was to me, and I'm sure you all have heard this and every early childhood teacher, so it's nothing new, is how helpful it was for me to have that person who gently took my crying child, right, into her lap, or put her arm around her, or engaged her with a toy, and then sort of looked at me with, like, had my kid in one eye and me with the other eye, and with that other eye gave me the "it's okay for you to go now." And it's all about, for a parent, of course, it's all about trusting that adult, right? That adult knows what they're doing. That adult is going to take care of my child. That adult is going to not ignore my child when she's crying, right? And so because of that, that adult is also taking care of me. And so I can leave, right? And then you're outside the door and you stop crying. And so, so when parents are having a hard time, just echoing the value that you all have for them in being caring and confident, and professional, because that is so much better, of course, than what your fear is that you're not leaving your child, like your child is going to suffer, right? And so if you have somebody who is kind of hesitant, or like looks at you like, is this okay, right, then that's the worst, because then it's just like, I can't go. I gotta take care of my kid. So, thank you all for being strong and confident and cool and professional, and letting parents know that yes, their kids will be okay, and yes, it is good for them to leave. Mary Kay, I'm curious about a cultural thing. So since you had 5 Indian families, did you, is there, and I don't know enough, sadly, about the Indian culture, but just in terms of, was there any question or anything just around, is this okay for them culturally for me to encourage their separation from their children?
I don't think I thought of it that way, so I may not have phrased this properly,
Okay.
but I asked them as a whole group, what for how many of you is this the first time that you've separated from your child? And every hand went up except the Caucasian family. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay, my computer is doing odd things. And so that kind of told me, oh, and they also shared, and I said, tell me a little bit about how that works. And most of them lived in multiple generation households. And so this was the first time the little person had separated from everyone in the family at the same time. And so, we said, well, then it's very understandable why they would be distressed, and we'll do what we can to help them feel safe. And again said, those 3 staff members in the gym with your kids have no investment in the kids being unhappy. So if there's a problem that continues beyond a few minutes, they'll call us, and they can use the phone on the wall, and they also have my cell phone, and they will call. But we just talked about kind of what it feels like to separate from someone you care about for the first time. And we talked about it both from a parent point of view and from a child's point of view. And bless her heart, the Caucasian couple who were there, the mom said, oh yeah, I remember the first time I entrusted my child with somebody else, and it was really hard. And so I certainly didn't have the cultural knowledge about them that I could have had, but I had enough sensitivity to at least ask what their experience was and kind of validate that that would make that challenging. And a few of those moms or dads said, yeah, but they're going to go to kindergarten in a year or two. And so they're gonna have to go without mom or dad, grandma and grandpa. And I said, yeah, and most children learn how to do these things, but if you come from not having done it ever, then you're at the very beginning of learning, and that's fine. That's really fine. That happens to a lot of kids.
So this conversation, actually, I pulled this out. I love Zaretta Hammond's work, and she talks about culturally responsive teaching in the brain. And she's got a grid on page 27 that shows a lot of cultures in terms of if we're individualistic or collectivist. Mm-hmm. India, it looks like, is 48. Sorry. Yeah, 48. Where the US is 91, it goes 100 to 0. And it makes me think about, and even back to the comment earlier about kids coming in with specific skill sets or not, whether they can dress themselves, whether they can, the regulation skills and various things are separating, thinking about the value system of the community from which the kiddos are coming, that it might not be valued to foster individualism. You need to do this, you need to dress yourself, you need to feed yourself, and all of these things, because the goal might be, like as Mary Kay is talking about these multi-generational households, the goal may be that they want the message to be, when you're 28 years old and you're going through this issue, whatever, I'm just making something up, or you're 16 or you're 40, we want you to be very clear that you need to know how to ask for help, and that it is not all on your shoulders. Whereas in really individualistic communities, people often, there's a lot of mental health need because people feel like they're alone and they have to bear all of the weight on their own shoulders. And so in some of these communities, we actually have had some issues in our elementary, like even kindergarten, where teachers are frustrated because kiddos, maybe they're not putting their, the snow pants and the boots and the hats and the mittens and all, they're not getting ready to go outside, and maybe looking for help. And my question is, I understand the teacher can't do it all for 25 kids. However, if you're coming from a culture in which you are more collectivist, could we just pair the children with each other? Can we put them in small groups? Can they help each other? And it all happens and they all get out the door and they're all happy. And they have the skill set. It's not about whether or not they have a skill set. It's more about the message behind it. Like, wait a minute, you're not going to jump in to do this for me. You don't love me, because that's how I receive love and how I give it at home. And so I kind of play with this, and connected to the pandemic, I wonder, and it'll be interesting to see in the future, if families, we felt isolated, right? We were isolated. We were in our homes and we were assessing structure and routine and activities and all of these things. And I wonder if, as a community, a lot of, from what I have seen, people really, really, really were hoping for more community. And I wonder if we're going to shift a little bit and incorporate more collectivist values now and do more in partnership with our children. Then, like, if we're seeing a little bit of shift like that, no, they don't have to eat on their own because I can feed them. Or some of those things that happen in really collectivist cultures, because they are going to learn how to do it on their own. And once they go to kindergarten, I don't have the opportunity to feed them anymore. So I'm going to feed them up until they go, because I want them to know the world is not all on your shoulders. So that's kind of a lot, but I'm curious to know what people have thought about and kind of played with those thoughts.
Interesting. It was interesting to me when I had that class, 2 of the families from India knew each other and signed up together, and the other 3 didn't know anyone else.
So Jenny, I was just going to ask you, having your background in Montessori, so how would this be handled in a Montessori preschool?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Nikki, thank you so much for bringing those ideas up, because I think it's really important. The last Montessori school I worked at had a good number of Somali and Ethiopian families, and they have just like the collectivist culture, and how they show love and care is to dress their children and to feed them, like literally, even a 4 and 5-year-old, a lot of times by the spoon. So you're always in this balance, because that is the opposite of what they were trying to nurture in the classrooms, in terms of this idea that motor development is really tied to learning those basic core life skills. So kind of how they handled it was just trying so hard to let go of judgment, because it's so easy to judge when you're from an individualistic culture, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's doing this for her child. But to reframe, it's like, just like you were saying, Nikki, this is how love and care looks like in this culture. And it's my bias and my lens that is making me see it as something that's not supportive of the child, right? It's the opposite. So it's really just coming against those conflicts and noticing them and being aware of them and trying to really respect the family's way of being. But at the same time, in the classrooms, they would teach them how to use a fork or teach them how to pour their own water, so that balance of honoring the family system, but at the same time, showing how to do things, because that's what we do in Montessori, is show how to use practical life things. But yeah, it's interesting. You're always running up against your biases, right? Like, that's my lens. So. It's really helpful. When I learned about the collectivist and individual cultures, it's so helpful for reframing in your own brain. That we are just one lens. I'm just one lens looking at this, and that's my background in it. And I have to be really careful to honor other cultures' approaches to this kind of thing.
And I think that's the key. If you're coming to the families you work with from a place of honor and respect and not judgment, there's so much that we can learn from one another. And I was specifically with Nikki's example thinking of my own kids in Montessori because it's a multi-age environment. Oh my goodness, my little 8-year-old is finally thriving in 3rd grade because he's no longer the youngest in our family. He's the youngest, right? And he is turning into this amazing little leader caring for the 1st and 2nd graders. So like that, you can still build up and embrace the parts of culture that your students have, even in like Montessori is so focused on individual independence, but it's also really a part of being a community together and helping each other. And maybe the focus just shifts a little bit more in that direction of how can we help each other.
Yeah, and I would say that's the biggest thing in Montessori. It's not independence for its own sake, but independence that leads to interdependence, right? So if you can tie your shoe as a 5-year-old, then you can help the 3-year-olds. If you can do a certain kind of math as a 3rd grader, you can help that 1st grader who's just learning that. So that gets lost sometimes in the understanding of Montessori, but it's still more of a Western European cultural mindset. So you always have to be careful of that.
I was looking for a link. I'm still looking for it online, just in Google, because Zaretta Hammond has some great resources. And what I just put there is actually, it's not going to be as helpful. It's just that grid that I have in my drive. But if I could find you the whole page where I took it from, that would be better. So I'm still searching.
Yeah, I was looking for a link to the book, and I always hate going to Amazon. Like, it's just like, why give Jeff Bezos more money when there are other booksellers? But my other go-to is Chronicle Books, and they didn't have the link. So, oh, she's gone. I was just gonna ask Nick or Maggie to encourage students to join us. Is there anything else before we end for the day? What a great conversation, as always.
Thanks, everybody. I have to sign off too. Great to
Okay.
see you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, everybody.
Bye.
We will see you again next week, hopefully.
Mhm.
Fingers crossed. Have a great week.
Bye.